Welcome to Anywhere the Needle Drops. I am your host, Justin Flegel, and this episode today we have Miles Nielsen. Miles Nielsen is in the Red Chuck studio. Well, actually, I guess he was virtually in the Red Chuck studio. It was slightly awkward because for some reason the video conferencing software was not operating quite correctly on my end. So apparently Miles could see me, but I could not see him. But hey, we made it happen. It was still a fun chat. It was great to have Miles in on the show after all these years. Big fan of his since the first time seeing him, many years back. I think it was probably at the Roger Clyne show that he and I discussed during this episode. But you know Miles Nielsen of the Rusted Hearts. Of course, he is part of a rock and roll family. You know, his pop, Rick Nielsen of Cheap Trick. I'm pretty sure you've heard of them. But we talked about just, what it's like growing up, so often us creative type folks, maybe we have some parents that are, a little concerned about our future. They tell us, hey, you got to get a real job and do all that sort of a thing. But, when your dad's a rock star, they can't tell you that, right? When you say, I want to go be a rock and roller, and your dad's a rock and roller, right? What are they going to say? So we talked a bit about that, had a fun time, and it's a good chat. So please enjoy this episode of Anywhere the Needle Drops. Before the interview, we have a little track from Miles called Overpass. Enjoy.
Getting old.
right.
All
If you,
right.
since you are able to see me, if you notice me wincing from time to time, I have an old back injury that decided to flare up yesterday, and every once in a while I just do one of those turns you don't even know what causes it, and it
Oh
just
man.
twinges the nerves. So if you see me wincing, it's nothing you're saying. It's all that.
Right
So
on. Yeah, I've been there before.
yeah, no fun, no
Yeah.
fun. I
No,
imagine,
not at all.
especially on the road and such, that kind of thing probably happens fairly often.
Well, it's like you do it doing the dumbest things. It's not the things that like you would think would hurt your back. It's like brushing your teeth or something. Then that's when it locks up. You're like,
Yep.
I was just brushing my teeth.
Or
Here I
a
am loading,
sneeze.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Just things that jar your back that you don't really even realize.
Yep. 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 That is the way of things, especially as the years get on. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, Miles Nielsen, thanks for coming on the show. It's really great to have you here. I believe if my notes are correct, we've tried to do this a couple of times before and could never quite get it to land. I think it was scheduling and whatnot. And then, the show went on a hiatus for a while, but I'm glad we were finally able to do it.
Yeah, and I always like being, I always like to do it in person. That's more fun. But
Yeah.
just kind of the way my schedule's been working out lately is just I'm in Arizona right now.
Yeah.
Have a show in a couple days here, and and then we get back and we're trying to open a club up in Rockford. We're not trying. We are opening a club up in Rockford.
Nice.
So a lot of our time has been dedicated to that when I'm not on the road. So yeah, I'm glad it worked out this way.
Well, definitely. And that way, we can get this out. We're planning on releasing this, I think, a week or two before you come to the area for the Acorn show.
Yeah.
So that way the local audience can get a little taste of what they're in store for that. So
excellent.
Yeah. So speaking of that, now you're pretty much a regular at the Acorn these days, right? Isn't it at least once a year you're over there playing?
Yeah, I would say it's once to twice a year. For a bit, it was the first show we played there was years. I think it was about maybe 10, 11 years ago with the boat. We were on tour with the Bodines, and that was our introduction to that room. And then we fell in love with the room immediately. I was like, man, this room is, and it's only a little over 3 hours from Rockford.
Sure. Yeah.
So, it's not a stretch for us to do that room just on a weekend when we're not just on tour, where we could be, just doing 2-3 shows that week and hop over to the Acorn. It's easy. Outside of losing an hour, it's great. But, we love the room. And I think the second time through, we ended up playing with Cracker. We were on tour. We did a couple dates with Cracker.
Yeah.
And then the third time was, I think the third time was David Fink had allowed us to show up there in the middle of winter. He gave us the keys and opened it for us so we could set up for like 5-6 days on the stage and just work on tunes in the middle of winter.
Oh, wow. That's excellent. Okay.
And we couldn't figure out how to turn the heat up. So the whole time we were there, it was like 54 degrees in there, and we were all bundled up the entire time. And then I think the second to last day we were there, we walked over to Nelson's pub and invited everybody that were there to come over to a free rehearsal show. And everybody from Nelson's, there was about, I don't know, I would say about 30 to 35 people came over and just watched about an hour and 20 minutes worth of music that we'd been working on for a new record. So that was our third time there. It was very impromptu and excellent. And we filmed kind of a fun little 9-minute, satirical documentary out of that one. And then the next time through, we actually headlined. So, and then we've been going back since then pretty regularly.
That's one of those amazing little rock and roll stories that, if you're the patron, you tell it to people and they may not even believe you, where you're like, I was just sitting in the bar and, here comes Miles Nielsen and says, hey, come watch a show for free,
Yeah, well, it was great because we were, we didn't prepare very well, because what we didn't realize is when we got, about the day, I think we got there in the afternoon, that evening, it was like a brutal snowstorm. So we kind of got stuck, we're like, everything was kind of shut down. And, the geniuses that we are, we had these gift cards to a restaurant about 25 miles away to that Moe's Southwest Grill.
Oh, yeah.
And we were like, well, we're kind of all broke right now. Do we want to go try to get these free burritos, And we damn near ran off the road like 4 times. And we're like, we're doing this all for a free burrito, you know? So after that trip, when we got back safely, we locked in and we were like, we're not leaving. If we need to get food, there's that little grocery store there. And if nothing else, we're going over to have dinner at Nelson's. And that's when the show kind of came about, as we went over for dinner and we were like, let's just invite these people over for a show. You know, why not? Everything's set up, ready to go. It sounds pretty good. And, yeah, it was great. It was hilarious because we weren't even facing the audience too. We were set up in a round on the stage. So we just kind of kept it and rolled like that. And you know, people still bring it up to this day. They're like, that was so fun. I'm like, yeah, I don't know that we'd even do that now. You know, like we might just say like, let's just wait for the record to come out. I don't want anybody to hear these things, you know. But
sure,
we were so excited about the tunes we were working on. We were like, let's invite Nelson's over here. So it was great.
That's awesome. And I know that drive too from Three Oaks to Moe's, and it is not fun in the winter. I mean, there's a lot of drives around here that aren't fun in the winter, and that's one of them for sure.
And we had emptied out our Sprinter too, so it was just basically like, you know, one big sail, you know. So it was like empty, super light. We're just blowing all over the highway. We were watching cars go into the ditches. I mean, it was like pure ice out there. And I think that's I-94, or is that yeah.
Yep, 94. Yep.
Yeah, that's 94.
Yeah. That reminds me, I was just at this event that takes place up in the Upper Peninsula every February. And it's crazy because all these bands, you know, by choice, drive up to the Upper Peninsula in February to play a bunch of shows for each other in a hotel. And it's just kind of one of those insane things where you're out there on the road in the snow. You're like, why are we doing this again? You know,
what's this why in February like, you know, is that what's that event called?
Thunder Snow.
Thunder Snow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's sort of a I don't even know how you would describe it. I mean, it's open to the public, but pretty much most of the patrons are, you know, it is the bands, their families and friends. And then I'm there and, you know, I got connected to it in my journalism role. I met one of the bands and they were telling me about that. I'm like, that sounds so insane. I have to come. Can I come? And they're like, sure you can. And technically anyone can buy tickets and go, but you know, not many do because who's going to? And they're not named bands. It's all these bands that know each other from I think it's Steve Albini's message board.
Cool.
And they basically, you know, spent years chatting with each other about weird tweaks to their pedals or whatever. And then one day someone was like, hey, you know what? We should get together and play some shows. So it's this, the group calls itself PRF, and they do an event in Chicago called the PRF Barbecue. They do one closer to my way up near Kalamazoo called the Camp Out. They've done them on the West Coast. I think there's going to be one in Louisville this year. And then the favorite one of mine is the one up in the UP called Thunder Snow. And it's really just,
is that in Marquette?
It's about an hour from Marquette. It's right by Escanaba, actually.
Okay.
So, but it's all these, you know, music nerds that just play really loud, obnoxious music, but they're the kindest souls you'll ever meet. And, you know, we take over this hotel. The staff loves us, and just have a good time on weekends. So it's really fun. Yeah,
that's fun.
Yeah.
My first job out of college was working for Steve Albini.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, spent my first 2.5 years working at Electrical Audio in Chicago.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, what did you study in college that led you to that?
Recording engineering. Okay. Sound reinforcement. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So I'm. You know, it's funny because I sort of right when I graduated was sort of the boom of digital age. So I missed like learning any Pro Tools, any sort of that stuff. Like I got out of school and I mean, we were splicing 2-inch tape and you know, we were scrubbing the playback head and, you know, I mean, it was really great to work at Steve's place because, you know, Steve was just like all analog. So it was like, you know, I'm working on the Studer 880 that, you know, I'm like, I just worked on that machine, you know, I'm comfortable with it. And then after I left Steve's place, you know, everywhere we had gone, you know, for the most part was all, you know, Pro Tools. And I'm like looking at it like, what is this foreign substance? You know, like it was so different. I mean, signal flow is signal flow, you know, it just makes sense. But, you know, when you're not sure of things like, you know, buffer speed, you know, buffer size, you know, these things. And you're like, oh man, the IO is so different. It's not hands on. It's all in the box there. It was a whole other like learning curve. So it was an interesting process coming out of there, you know. And I when I got to Steve's place, it was this Studio B was just about finished up, but Studio A was under construction. So I'm thinking I'm getting out of school. I'm gonna, you know, recording engineering. I was like, you know, tuck pointing the chimney and, you know, building doors and laying hardwood floors, building baffles. And now when I go back there, it's great. Like my work is still up, you know. It's like,
Nice.
you know, we took time and really, you know, it was really fun. Actually, I was like, I'd never really worked with, you know, miter saws and table saws and all these things that we, you know, all of a sudden they were so trusting. They're just like, well, just figure it out. You know, I mean, it's, you know, I'm like, all right, here we go. So the first, I would say almost the first 2 years of there, we were building out Studio A.
That's so cool, and it makes me think of my friend Paul, who he does the sound for this show actually. But he is this guy who, you know, he comes from this roadie background, you know, on tour with like major national artists, and but that those technical skills all apply to, you know, he's building his own studio right now, but he doesn't just know the studio you know, the audio stuff. He knows the construction and all of that, and it's funny how that engineering all, you know, kind of it's a similar language to get all that, you know.
And Steve is like a mad genius. So, you know, like, I mean, not only does Steve know, you know, everything about recording and audio and all that, but like the guy will make like the most beautiful jewelry box out, you know, with, you know, all the, like all these finger joints and, you know, the dovetails and, you know, and he knows woodworking too. So like the guy, and he knows he's versed in billiard. He has a billiards table, not a pool table, but a billiards table.
Yep.
So like he's great at gamble. You know, he's a, you know, poker player. And I'm like, you can't stump Steve. So good luck. You know, so like if you're trying to bullshit Steve Albini, you're probably going to get fired, you know? So, you know, I learned quickly. I was like, I am probably the dumbest guy in the room. So, yep, I'm just going to, you know, head down, kind of focus here and figure out how to, you know, build a sound baffle or build a door, you know, build a door thick enough to like keep sound in this dead room. You know, like it was just wild. Like all the building of that studio is so complex and so great and so thought out. Like there's walls underneath the actual space that mirror the upstairs of the space. So it actually acts as a bass track or a bass response. So it actually promotes bass. And then the outsides of the walls are cut out. And then there's like, you know, chicken wire in there that's attached to a ground as a Faraday's cage. So you don't get any interference into, you know, electrically into these. I mean, it's you know, it's all smart stuff. And I was like, I was just learning on the fly, you know. You can only learn so much at college and, you know, and then you get in there and you're like, oh, this is actual college.
Yeah, this is where you actually get in there.
Yeah, this is where you actually learn the things that you're going to take forward with you, you know, moving forward. Like all the theories are great to know, but like once you get in there, you're like, I know nothing, you know. So being young and being dumb was perfect for working at Steve's place because I had to get smart real quick.
Sure, yeah. Now, do you still do any of that work, or are you strictly making music these days?
Mostly making music. I'll produce a few things here and there throughout, you know. I mean, I love producing records. It's just, you know, over the last, well, I would say, you know, post-COVID situation, I've sort of had to focus on just us as the Rusted Hearts and me. Just, you know, without making money for almost 2 years, I was sort of like you know, put behind the 8 ball where I was like, okay, got to get this back to where we were. Cause we were sitting in a really great position right before you know, we had just released our, you know, let's see, 1, 2, 3, our 4th full length record, Obahoy. It had come out. We'd gone to Europe. We had come back, had done a couple of release shows, and then like the whole world shut down. So it was like, oh boy, now, you know, how am I going to keep this? You know, there's 5 guys in the band. We have, you know, an agency. We have, you know, a tour manager. We have a merch guy. I've got, you know, quite a few people to take care of and to look after. And so it was really focused just on that. So, you know, over the last few years, I really haven't focused much on producing as much as I focused on just sort of getting the Rusted Hearts back on track.
Sure. Now, and, during that,
I mean,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think we're finally there, but you know, now it's like, now we're really in a space where we kind of desperately need to put out a new record.
Yeah.
So, I'm taking a little time, over March I demoed out about 10 new songs during, being shut down at home, and get a little studio at home and put together about 10 songs where I played all the instruments, and this, they turned out actually pretty fun. But so I've got about 10 songs, but I'd like to have about 10 more before we go into to cut a new record, just to make sure that we've got the best, let's say 10 to 12 songs.
Yeah. So was that your main focus during that time, or did you do, I recall during that COVID shutdown watching, I think it was Andrew McMahon was pretty much regularly doing concerts on Instagram, or, watching a couple of Roger Clyne and the Peacemaker shows, via Zoom sort of a thing. I mean, did you do any of that kind of stuff, or?
We did 43 weeks of every Thursday night. Every Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Time. My wife and I did about an hour and 20 minutes. Some of them turned out to be, like a fish show. It was like, oh God, it's like been 2.5 hours and we didn't even know because we were having so much fun.
Sure. Yeah.
And we started off, just with an iPhone on a selfie stick clamped to a drum hardware stand, and then we upgraded to this little white interface, this little digital interface, so I could then implement a soundboard. And then my friend Troy, who's now our tour manager, he ended up moving back from Nashville, and he had all this equipment, and he would come over every Thursday. So all of a sudden we had like a 3-4 camera shoot with full tilt audio. It was great. So
Sure.
We went from not knowing at all about going live to really having it nailed by midway through. We were like, man, this is a whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was noticeable for most artists doing that kind of a thing. I recall, things were pretty rocky initially with some of those live concerts, live stream concerts. But I think by the end, one of the last ones I watched, it was the Avett Brothers. They did a New Year's Eve concert, I think. And it was so beautifully, I mean, obviously they have a lot of resources, but it was also just, you could see the progression of the technology in real time. It was this beautifully produced thing where, a few months prior, we'd been watching these very laggy, pretty questionable broadcasts. Of course, I was desperate for live music, so I was doing anything I could to get it, so.
I think it was such a cool experience, and I mean, obviously not ideal, but you make the best of the situations, hopefully as a human.
Sure.
And
yeah.
I mean, it was super fun to watch, even theaters, turning their theater into okay, now we're streaming from here. There's no audience, but we have this beautiful space, and now we have this company coming in, and they're providing the streaming service and the cameras and the audio, and we're opening up our theater, and people are donating. It was just, I mean, it really forced everybody to just sort of adapt, and just figure out what are we doing here? Because I don't want this to end, but how are we going to figure out how to keep it going? And for us, it was not a lot, but it really kept, my family afloat, just by people hitting that virtual tip jar was such a thing that I mean, I can't even, I've thanked everybody that's done it up and down, but, still to this day, I can't believe everybody that got on every single week and tipped us money.
Sure. Yeah.
It was crazy. So
there was something special about that time, and not, like you said, it was horrible, and not that I'd ever want to go back there, but there was something really special about those moments. I know, going back to Andrew McMahon, I know he started to collab with other people on Instagram. And so he would have his friend that made really good cheese plates come on and do a lesson on how to make a really good cheese plate to eat while you watch the show, and just little silly things like that, and the unique ways people did things. I remember a local college here doing these outdoor drive up concerts where they just set up a stage in the parking lot, and you drove your car, and they had all the cars, spaced out and things like that.
Yeah.
And,
we did a few drive-in.
Yeah.
Baseball stadium kind of things.
Yeah.
That were pretty wild. I mean, it was pretty wild, man.
Yeah. It's not it's not something I'd want to go back to, but those are
it
moments
almost
that
seems
are,
like hearing talking with you, did that happen? Was that a real, did that happen? We did that?
Yeah.
As you learn and sort of move forward, and you just studying sort of the medical side of things. And it's we had no idea, what was all, anything, man. I mean, I remember wiping down my groceries, when we heard this thing, this thing lived for, 2 weeks, on surfaces, and you're just like, oh boy, like you're freaked out, I mean, I don't want anybody that I love and know to get sick and all this, just the extent that we were going to make sure everybody was safe. And now you look back at it, you're like, I mean, I would like to think that everybody's a little more cautious, but I've been out a few places where there's, a lot of young people having fun and having cocktails. I'm like, man, it is just the same as before. Like people are going crazy,
Yep.
I mean,
yeah.
And, and being a bit older, I'm like the guy who's walking by going, oh, I'm glad I'm not that age anymore.
Yep. Better go wash your hands and all that. Right?
Like, I've got the Purell strapped to my, fanny pack.
Yeah, that is it was definitely a strange moment. I remember at one point during that time, just turning to some friends and saying, virtually, I think it was this conversation, but I was like, I always wanted to live in interesting times. And I was such an asshole when I said that, because we're living in interesting times. And
yeah, well, you got your wish there for a while.
Yeah. So let's see. So you mentioned, first of all, the Acorn. I love that venue, and it kind of highlights, what we have here in this particular area. We call it Michiana, and some people hate that term, but I think it's a good designation for us, because we're in this part of Michigan that's not really considered a part of Michigan. We're kind of more culturally tied in with what's going on in South Bend and all that. But we have this beautiful aspect of being, roughly not halfway, but in between Chicago and Grand Rapids or Detroit or all that. So we can catch a lot of artists on their way through. And I think the Acorn especially really highlights that with some of the acts they get in there. And you mentioned a few that you played with, the Bodines, and there's that cohort with, you and Cracker and, all those kind of bands. The Peacemakers are the one band I still want to see get over to the Acorn one of these days and play, because I feel like they're kind of the missing link there. But
well, that's I just had dinner with Roger actually 2 nights ago out here in Arizona.
Yeah,
and I mentioned it to Greg, their manager, and he's like, you know what, I need to look into that. I said, well, the room would be perfect for you guys, number one.
Yeah.
And I mean, and so like I think within the next like 6 months that's going to be on their calendar for sure, because not that I'm saying like I have this clout, but I'm just saying like they know that I've played this room, a dozen times, and I'm like, you have to play this room. Trust me, like it would be perfect for you guys, and I know they're way into having you guys. So I think that one will be on their list. So
yeah. I do a lot of coverage of events at the Acorn, and so I know the people there really well. And I've dropped the Peacemakers' names more than a few times, because you're talking to a guy. I was, 14 years old following the Refreshments. I mean, I don't know if you can see my pendant, but I've been a fan of Roger Clyne for going on 30 years. I mean, pretty much as long as he's been playing music. And
that's awesome.
It reminds me, because actually the first time I saw you live was the day I interviewed Roger for this show.
Oh, cool.
You all were playing in Chicago. I think it was Chicago. And
at the Abbey.
Yeah. And this show was very young at that point, and I reached out on a whim, like, well, all they can do is say no, or probably nothing at all. And then when they said yes, I remember recruiting my friend Dylan to go with me to the show, because we were meeting Roger in the green room to do this interview. And I'm just like, you're my assistant now, and your number one job is to keep me cool during this interview with Roger Clyne. So that was
he's such a solid human too, man. He's such a good guy.
He is. He's actually been on the show since then. And I remember one time I'm looking at my dog sitting here on the floor right next to me when she was a pup the last time he was on, and she just started barking in the midst of the show. We were doing a phone or a Zoom thing like this. And I was so embarrassed. Here I am with Roger Clyne and my dog's ruining the show, and he just loved it. He's like, we started talking about dogs after that, and his dog.
Yeah, he's a dog guy.
Yeah.
I think his dad at the ranch has like 4 ranch dogs, and they're all, I mean, I've met all Roger's dogs, and Roger's definitely a dog guy.
Definitely. Yep. Well, we'll both keep working on our various ends to get them up to the Acorn.
Fun little segue on that, though, is Roger and I just actually, Roger came to Illinois He wanted me to go to Mexico to write songs. And I was like, well, why don't you come to Illinois? Because I know what Mexico means. Yeah. Mexico means cantinas and lots, there's a lot more to get in trouble with in Mexico. I was like, why don't you come to Illinois? So he came out to Illinois and we actually wrote what I think is a pretty good song. And those guys are tracking it. They just tracked a bit of it, I think, this past week. And then when I get back to Illinois, the Rusted Hearts are going to do a version. So you're going to hear two different versions of our take on the same song. So it's kind of fun.
Excellent. That's great. When's that going to be out?
We're not sure. We have a couple deadlines on a few things. We're doing a Driving and Crying cover. We're doing a Kevin Kinney song that we have to put out first. And then I think during that session, we'll probably record the same. So we're going to record and put out a few singles in the next few months. Nice. That's kind of our focus before we put out a full length record. Just trying to get the ball rolling of, okay, now that we're back to playing a lot and we're getting busy, and everything's sort of back to normal, let's get the ball rolling on some new music. So I feel like a good way to do that is if we can just maybe put out a couple singles to get that creativity and that feeling of, playing new music rolling again.
Yeah. So, and I know you said you wanted to have a few more songs under your belt before you go into the studio. Are you a deadline guy, or like we need to have 10 more songs by September 30th, or how does that work for you? Are you a deadline guy? Or are you just kind of as the muse hits guy? What's your method? I
have to have a deadline.
Yeah.
If I don't have deadlines, man, next thing you know, it's like 2030 and we're just, we're just still jamming the same songs because, we're still having fun. But, something happened with our band in the last year. And I don't know if it's just, we're all getting a little bit older. We've had some, a few more of these big conversations about, just how lucky we are, and whatnot. And some of the goals that we've set out to achieve and we've actually hit some of them. And I feel like we're just listening better than we ever have. And we're playing better than we ever have. And I think there's also been some sobriety that's happened too. Amongst the crew that I think is definitely been sort of an eye-opener, game changer when it comes to productivity and just more focus. So I think, there's just a listening and a hunger that I think that is easily lost. Being we've been the same five guys for 11 years now, and I think that can quickly turn into either, man, we're not as far as we want, or we don't keep our eye on the prize as much as, or, we should be further along. But then, if you really start looking at the music business and what it is and where we are and where we're located and all the things we've done, I'm like, guys, we've hit every goal that we've set out to achieve. I mean, so now let's set some new ones and let's focus on getting those, done. So,
yeah,
it's just kind of a cool space where we're in as a band, and all our kids are getting older. And, it's just, I don't know, it's a fun place to be, and also a challenging space to be, because you have to put out a better record than you've put out before, or at least that's the try. So it's just, it's kind of a fun thing for me. I'm a competitive guy. I've got brothers, so it's like, yeah, I'm not saying that not inside of the music business, but even just with myself, I'm competing against myself as a songwriter and as a performer. I want to be better than I was 10 years ago. My younger brother, who plays drums in Cheap Trick, he put on this song of mine when we were playing golf recently. And he's like, man, this is the younger you. Listen to that voice. And I said, that was the last record we put out. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, damn. And then we did some Nielsen Trust shows with my dad and with my wife. And he's like, man, your voice is getting better. I'm like, that's my focus,
Sure.
I don't want, just because I'm getting older doesn't mean I need to be worse at my, I'm still reaching for my prime,
yeah,
I'm still trying to get better at guitar all the time. I'm still trying to get better as a songwriter. I'm not just okay, yeah, here I am, in my late 40s trying to get worse, I'm like, no, I'm still competitive. I still want to sing like the younger me, apparently,
Yeah, I think that keeps us young. I mean, I think it's the point where you get settled and you stop challenging yourself. That's when you really start to kind of lose things. But I'm like you. I'm always trying to throw myself into the next thing that makes me uncomfortable and get that much better.
Oh yeah, I think that's healthy.
Yeah. So when you talk about goals, it sounds like your goals are largely, sort of like uh, creative self challenges. So it's not about, being a quote unquote rock star or anything like that. It sounds like maybe it's more so achieving a certain quality of sound or a certain type of sound, or what do your goals typically look like when you look ahead to the
Yeah,
future?
I think success leads to money, or success leads to, I guess, for a better term. I mean, I know we're a society that is based on status. So I want to see, our biggest goals are, if we put in the time to make the music what we want, and if we put in the time to make it always quality and the show's always quality, people will continue to show up and people will continue to grow that audience. And my thing is, like, I want to continue to grow our audience to where we have, like, we're not just strong in the Midwest and strong in the Southwest. I want to be strong everywhere. I want to be, I don't want people to just be like, I've never seen these guys. It's like, I want to have a strong hold. I'm not saying in every city in America, that's just not realistic at times, but like, I want to be able to go across the country and have people show up to our shows. I don't care if that's,
Sure.
I don't care if that's 100 people, or if that's 500 people, or if that's 1,000 people. Just a dedicated fan base to, like, knowing, like, we're going to go see this band and this is going to be a really great show every time.
Yeah.
And I think that goes with us making our records too.
Yeah.
There's the wince. There's the wince.
There it is. Sorry. Yeah. So I think in the current age of music, because there is, with, streaming and the internet, just so much selection out there. I mean, I think that is kind of the best version of success. And it makes me, going back to Roger, it makes me think, like, they've been doing that for decades now. That thing where, maybe not everyone knows their name, but everywhere they go, they have people that show up for them. I mean, I think that is the most tangible and probably fulfilling goal, really.
Yeah. I mean, to say that I haven't been watching, with a magnifying glass on his career, just because, over the last, 10 years, we've become friends. And I would say we're closer friends than most singer-songwriters become, just because of travel, but we keep in touch quite a bit. And I look up to what those guys have done. And just even the festival, like, you've built a festival in Mexico that happens twice a year, and you get thousands of people to drive to Mexico and, like, spend 4 days with you guys. And, like, they show up to everything. And it's like, not saying like it's realistic for, some guys that live in Rockford, Illinois to pull off a Mexico festival, but we're doing one. We're on our 7th year of a festival that we host in the Wisconsin Dells, that, we're selling out, and we've moved it to April, and it's April 12th and 13th this year. We call it the Stampede. And this is the 7th year of the Stampede. And this year we have Tara Lightfoot from Canada. We have Backyard Tire Fire from Bloomington, Illinois. And my wife is on the bill also. And, it's just a 2-day thing that we do. We do a Friday night show. We do a Saturday day show, which we host, like, a luncheon songwriter round, and then a Saturday performance. And it's in a 200 cap black box room up in the Dells. And I mean, people have said to me, best weekend of the year. Oh my God. It's just because it's so intimate. It's so personal. And I saw a guy, we just announced the show on Monday, which was yesterday. And I had a guy that I saw wrote on the announcement. And he said, I met strangers there last year. They become lifelong friends. That's exactly what I want to have happen.
Yeah. That's amazing. I'll have to check that show out. I didn't know you were doing that, but that sounds like a lot of fun. And I'm not too far from the Dells. I can make that drive for 2 days.
Oh, you'd love it. You'd love it. Yeah.
So let's see. So you've got this. So the Stampede Festival, we'll put that in the show notes for sure. That sounds like a lot of fun. And then you're coming up here to the Acorn in April, right?
Yeah, I think it's the weekend before the Stampede. I think we're there on April 4th. So
okay, all right.
I think that's right. April 5th, April 4th, April 5th.
The 5th sounds right. In fact, I'm looking right at it. I should. It says April 5th. Yep, April 5th.
Yep, April 5th.
Yeah. So, what else you got going on tour wise? You have any other shows planned right now, or are you guys just kind of taking it easy? And
We've got right now, March is really slow. We usually try to take off February and March based on the fact that it's usually freezing in the Midwest.
Sure.
This year it's 65 degrees and totally clear. And we could have toured all throughout the winter, but we didn't know that, we didn't know. So
yeah, how are you going to plan for this? Yeah.
Here I am in Arizona doing a couple, some shows. I'm going to go over actually and check out PH Nafa's studio. He's doing some work at a studio. I'm going to go meet with him.
Nice.
And then we have a show in Old Town Scottsdale on Thursday. Then when we get back, we play Shank Hall in Milwaukee as the Rusted Hearts. And then I have a solo show in Homewood, Illinois, which I don't do a lot of solo shows, but I'm going to do a solo show in Homewood, Illinois. And then April gets busy. So we come see you guys at the Acorn. Then we do the Stampede. And then after the Stampede, we hop on the road with Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers for I think it's four or five dates. We do.
Nice.
We do St. Louis, Kansas City, Omaha, St. Paul, and Milwaukee. And then we do a 2-night stand up in a little room up in Appleton, Wisconsin. And then we just get busy for the rest of our lives.
Sure. Yeah. Then it's summer and it all goes by in a blur. So.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm like looking at my calendar going, okay, graduation party for my daughter. I have June 30th. How's that? How does that work? Because if it doesn't work, that's the only date we can make it work.
Yeah.
So
does your family tag along at all on the road, or are they like, go do your thing and we'll be here when you come back?
My wife comes along quite a bit. She's a songwriter as well. So she'll definitely come with and usually sit in on a few songs. We have our own thing that we do, a duo kind of thing, pretty often throughout the year, but she's got her own band and she'll come along here and there. Like usually on tours though, it's usually just me and the Rusted Hearts.
Nice
crew.
You mentioned playing some solo shows. When you do those on the occasion that they come up, do you have, songs set aside particularly for that sound, or does the whole catalog translate pretty well to that solo sound?
Yeah, there's only there's maybe 5-6 songs out of like the 70 some that have been published as the Rusted Hearts that I don't touch. But everything's pretty much fair game. I think I've probably played every one of them just like out of like seeing how it works and seeing if I can do it, because I'll get a request for something. Then like, ooh, not Moonlit Ride. That's a tough one. It's like more dancey and, and then I'll do it and I'll be like, okay. So I could pull it off on acoustic guitar, but I'll try it. I pretty much leave the full catalog open for, if someone wants to hear it, I'll barrel through it, and that makes fun for live music because you never know if it's just going to train wreck or if it's going to be good or maybe inspired in some weird way. But yeah, I like the fact that playing a solo show allows me to just 100% take it to wherever I want to take it to.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's probably some creative freedom there that, you're the only person with the input.
100% creative freedom, no one's going to give me this, the side eye and be like, what are you doing? That's not the part, man. I'm like, tonight it's the part.
Yeah. A little more of an improv jazzy kind of thing you can do there. You can just kind of mix it up. So
100%.
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit. I mean, obviously you grew up in a family of music, but was playing music a thing you were doing early on? Did you pick up a guitar as a kid, or what were you doing as far as music goes when you were younger?
I was singing in church choirs when I was young, like, starting like 4 to 10 years old ish. Church choir every weekend, I was in the cherub choir, had to wore the blue robe with the silk sash and had a really nice soprano. And then as puberty set in and I found skateboarding, I found the darker side of life and was like a skateboard punk for a while. And, and then when I was in jazz, I was playing trumpet in middle school. When I was in jazz band in 8th grade, a buddy of mine was playing guitar in jazz band. He played Sweet Child of Mine, and that was it. I was like, oh my God. Like a kid my age could sound like Slash and play guitar.
Yeah.
And I was like, the next day I went home and I said, man, I want to play guitar. And my dad thankfully had, a couple hundred laying around.
Yeah, I'm
and was like,
imagining going through you. Yeah.
I had a Greco super real Les Paul. So it was a Japanese brand Les Paul that he let me borrow, which he did take back actually. Only about 10 years ago did he take it back, but he's like, hey, I want to get that Greco Les Paul back. So yeah, then I dove in like big time to playing guitar. And, I remember my older brother, he's just a year ahead of me in school, and his friends would come over and they're like, what's wrong with your brother, man? He's just upstairs in his bedroom all the time. He's like, yeah, he's just playing guitar. And he's, I was a kid who was like fast forwarding and rewinding cassettes,
Yeah.
Just like learning Black Dog by Zeppelin and, learning, just Jimi Hendrix tunes. And I pretty much just dove in hard to that. I wasn't really looking at singing as an option until I was in a band early on in high school, and I started singing 2 songs in our set. And then people were like, hey man, I really like when you sing. You should think about singing more. And then that's when it all came crashing down, and I became the singer of the band.
So at that point of your life, as a kid, are you thinking ahead toward like, this is what I want to do for a career? Or at that point, are you not even thinking that fully about it?
I don't even know that I knew what that meant. I think I was just thinking about like, what's my next move here? Like, am I going to go to college? If I go to college, what am I going to do in college? Like, I knew that I wanted to play music. I just didn't know, my focus was way more day to day than it was long term.
Sure.
It wasn't until my counselor in high school, my senior year, or right before my senior year, she said, I think you need to take some courses that you'll maybe get some good grades in, which meant theater tech, madrigal choir, and there was one more, and then child development. So I've always been a fan of, kids.
Yeah.
Probably because, it takes one to know one kind of a thing. And so I all of a sudden my GPA went from like a 2.6 to like a 3.2, and I was able to, start looking at some colleges. And I actually had to do a vocal audition to get into the music program at Illinois State because my ACT score was 1 point too low.
Oh, wow.
So I went down to Illinois State with my grandfather, who was an opera singer, who actually helped me learn the songs for my audition. That was my dad's dad. And then my dad, so it was 3 generations of Nielsen, went down to Illinois State. And I performed 3 songs, 2 in the foreign language, 1 in English, in front of the vocal board at Illinois State. And I got in. So I was like, whoa, that was nerve wracking, man. That was one of the scariest things I think I've ever done.
Sure. Yeah.
I remember the vocal director's, his name was Arvid Larson. And he just had like this RBF, and I was like, man, this guy scares me. He was terrifying. And I'm just sitting there just like, oh, okay, I know this. I can do this. I can do this. And I did it. And I actually sang fairly well. And I came out, and they were like, they came out and talked to my dad and to my grandpa, and they're like, well, he's in. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know that was my focus of what I wanted to do, but at least it gave me some sort of direction as to like, hey, I'm gonna go and learn more about music.
Yeah.
As a kid who like learned playing guitar by ear and not by books and theory, I was way behind on the theory bus. So like I got to school, and here I am, a music major, and I'm in theory 101, and then theory 1 and theory 2. And I was like, I have to go backwards. So I had to go backwards and take theory 101 again, just to get a hold on it, which I'm glad I did, but then, in the long run, it made sense. But in the short term, my GPA was less than desirable.
Well, but even then, especially at that age, you just really need something to latch onto, even if, everyone wants us to tell them, what we want to, quote unquote, be when we grow up and everything. But really, you kind of need something that speaks to you enough to follow it through and see where it takes you. And sometimes maybe it's not even the right thing, but at least it gives you a place to stretch some muscles and figure some things out,
Yeah. And I think, the cool thing and the not cool thing about my folks being who they are, I mean, I grew up a dreamer, you know, they never told me that I couldn't, you know, they never told me anything. That was like, they didn't say like, hey, you can be in a band, you can be anything you want to be. It was just like, they were so busy, you know, my dad's busy doing his thing and my mom was busy raising 4 kids. And they never told me like, hey, you know, you should focus on this, or like, you know, hey, you know, just like the little things that maybe like a grandpa might pull you aside and teach you about finances or teach you about, you know, how to use a saw. Those weren't things that were happening in my life.
Sure. Yeah.
So
it's hard for,
I went to school like dreaming, like I didn't even know, like, you know, naivety for sure of like, here's my dad, he's on a tour bus, he's flying around the country playing music. I just kind of thought it was that easy.
Yeah, exactly.
In a totally ridiculous way. Like, and then when I really started focusing, and, you know, I would say like my sophomore year of college, when I started to, you know, play in bands regularly and started, you know, sort of doing the, you know, bookings and, you know, all the things that come along with being in a band, you know, scheduling rehearsals, I was like, this is a lot of work to keep all these guys in line and, you know, pick out songs. And then when I started writing songs, it was like, oh man, this is a whole thing, you know? So I was honestly, I was super naive to what it is that I even could do, or what it took to even be. So I feel like, you know, I always say this, that I'm just kind of a late bloomer, you know, like,
yeah,
grew up dreaming, thinking everything was just going to like work out, you know, everything's coming up roses, you know, and then one day you're like, oh my gosh, this is super hard, you know?
I mean, how are you going to not when, you know, I speak to a lot of musicians and they have that conversation with their parents where they're like, you're not going to be a rock star. But then, you know, when your dad literally is the rock star, how are you going to, you know, like, of course I'm going to dream and go big. And, you know, it's worked out for you. So,
yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I think that the biggest thing that's worked out for me is that I have a good work ethic, and I don't mind working at music. You know, I think I mean, like anything in life, right? There's going to be always someone that's going to outwork you, right? So,
sure, yeah.
You know, it's like, well, I don't like to get outworked, you know. My older brother definitely, you know, made me competitive because he's like, hey, come play golf, come play basketball. You know, I wouldn't know shit about sports if it wasn't for him. And
sure.
And then when he punches you in the face, you know, he's like, let's get boxing gloves. And he, you know, knocks you down 3 times. You're like, I don't like that feeling, you know? So, I mean, I've got like, just, you know, enough like I would say like Midwestern sort of grit that's like it's helped in a lot of ways, where, you know, being a naive little dreamer kid to like now being, you know, a middle-aged guy who's like, you know, I'm a late bloomer and here we are. It's okay. And I'm still ready to work, you know. I got a solid 20 more years in me to prove things to myself.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, hell, if you look at Springsteen, you might have even more than that. He's still out there putting on those 3-hour shows at his age.
I know, man. That guy's an animal. I better start working out more.
Yeah. Yep. Get yourself a trainer or something. And yeah, I don't know how he does it, but no, I think that is the perfect combination. Like you mentioned, the Midwest grit, and I think there's something to be said about that Midwest grit meeting the dreamer mindset. And I tell you, I see so much more of that nowadays. And everyone listening to this is going to roll their eyes because here I go again on this thing. But when I first started writing about music and local culture, it was right after the '08 recession. And you saw all these people who had lost doing the right thing, the safe office jobs. And so they all turned to their passions. And I think when you have that combination of that mindset from this area of the country, and then you throw in some dreaming with it, you get some beautiful results out of it. You really do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful and dangerous recipe because,
yeah,
you know, I mean, you know, at this point, like I would, number one, having worked for myself for a long time, I'd be a horrible employee. You know, like I would not listen.
Sure,
I would do it my way, and so I kind of have to be in this position. I can't go backwards now. So
yeah.
I mean,
for sure,
you know, and I mean, I've been divorced, and you know, I've barreled through a lot of conversations with my kids. You know, I have 2 girls, and you know, it's one of those things where like you look back at your situation, and you're like, okay, everything that I've done from then till now, it all makes sense now.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, like all the things that are hard that you're like, how are we going to get through this? And then when you're through it, you're like, that made me better. That made me more honest. That made me, you know, that made me appreciate all the things more. So, you know, I think it's just a good recipe for creating more songs.
Definitely. Yeah.
You know, it's like, if you can dive into the, you know, I'm not one that's going to shy away from, I'll go deep with you if you want to get into conversation, talk about, you know, losing or, you know, being divorced or not seeing your kids or having, you know, the quote unquote American dream, you know, the 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath house in the suburbs with the fence and the rainbow swing set. I've been there. I've had it.
Yeah.
And then I had a 1-bedroom apartment back in the hometown where I grew up, and everything in my house but my slow cooker was hand me down from friends. And I had $53 in my bank account, and I won the draw at the Italian Social Club for $2,500 cash that day. And I was back on my feet, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like, just, you know, that's the stuff that makes you better, you know?
I think and there's an important lesson there in that, just sort of realizing that, you know, in this moment, things might suck. And, you know, you mentioned a few things that really hit home for me in the recent months of my life, you know, because having recently gone through a divorce and finding myself no longer in a house in a friend's basement and all these other things, and slowly working my way out of that. And even, you know, talking about, you know, this back pain I've got right now, it's like there was a time where I would have been focused on this just sucks so much. And now I'm at an age where I think about, you know, this pain I'm currently feeling or those scenarios that I'm going through and thinking, yeah, this sucks at the moment, but it will go away. Like it will be better in a few days or a few months or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, hopefully we'll have learned something from it. You know, I think that's a lesson for life right there.
Well, just if I can recommend one thing about the back thing is, if you're going to eat edibles, don't eat 100 milligrams thinking it's 10. Because boy, does that escalate quickly, and you think you're going to die.
Yeah, I bet. I made that mistake once. I'm a pretty lightweight when it comes to that. And I went on a hiking trip with some friends out in Portland some years back, and was very poorly recommended the dosage for someone of my abilities, and it led to some very interesting times out in the woods, I'll tell you that. But
yeah, I've had some friends that have had that happen, and you know, it's an expensive ambulance bill if you think you're actually having a heart attack when you're just too high.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So you've got, as we wind down here, you've got, you know, working toward an album on the horizon. You know, you got a summer of shows coming up. Any other big goals either this year or in the next 5, even 10 years? Like, is there something really big you're still aiming for in your career? Are you, you know?
Well, one of the things that we've been shooting for the last handful of years, and we actually got it this year, and it's already sold out, is we wanted to get on one of those, the rock boat cruise.
Oh, nice.
And they invited us onto the cruise this year, and turns out that thing sells out really fast because it's already sold out for January. We're going to, it leaves from Miami, and then we go to the Bahamas, and then we go to Roatan, Honduras. And that was one of our goals. So that, you know, that brings me back to earlier of like, you know, we set goals and we've achieved them. And now, you know, honestly, this was just this happened a month ago.
Yeah.
So now we have to refocus our goals, and, you know, there's things, you know, and I don't know even what those things are currently. Have to take more of a hard look at now that we've, you know, kind of righted the ship on everything. And I want to just focus in. And I think for me, the biggest goal right now is just putting out that new record. You know, I don't really want to look too far beyond that, because I want to, you know, we're in an interesting place of being a band for, you know, 11 years. And I really don't want to short side that record at all. I don't want to look past it. I want to look just kind of right into it and focus in on those songs and make the record that we really feel like we can make at this point. And so I think more than anything of looking past that is just looking right at that. And that's kind of my biggest goal right now, is to get that record and make it exactly what, you know, just something that we can be super proud of and that can last forever. You know, I mean, that record is going to be around forever. So let's make the best record that we can ever, you know, that we've made.
Yeah, so definitely. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing it when it comes out. And April 5th, we'll be seeing you at the Acorn. I'm going to do my best to get out there to catch that show and hopefully chat at you then. And yeah, it'll be fun to see what you come up with the record and with the tour this summer. So
Justin, it's awesome talking with you, man.
Yeah, you as well.
I wish you could have seen my face, but actually it's probably better that you couldn't. But I do have a little bit of a tan right now, though. So
got that Arizona tan going on. Yeah. Sorry, I missed that as well. But we'll do this again, and hopefully we'll have all the tech in order. Or maybe even one day we can get you here in person in the studio when the timing works out.
I would love it, man. So, and hopefully your back heals up, man.
Thank you much. Take care. I really appreciate taking the time to come on the show.
Absolutely.
And good luck with everything. All right.
Appreciate it, buddy. Take care.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to Anywhere the Needle Drops, a product of Red Chuck Productions. Be sure to keep tabs on everything going on with this show and everything else Red Chuck over at redchuckproductions.com or by following us at Red Chuck Productions on social media. Special thanks to Hero Jr. for our theme music. You can check them out, listen to their songs, and see where they're going to be over at herojrmusic.com. That's HEROJRMUSIC.com. Also, special thanks to Paul Clemson, our sound engineer and producer. And while you're at it, make sure you visit the websites and band camps and shows of all of our guests. If you want local music, if you want independent music, or any kind of art, you've got to support them. So give musicians and artists your money. We will see you at the next episode. Until then, here's to life.